A rain-soaked street in downtown Chicago, an unexpected warmth inside a cozy bakery, and a sharp tailored coat soaked at the shoulders. She was putting away the last batch of warm sweet potato bread when the door chime rang, bringing in a stranger whose quiet presence immediately filled the room. He spoke in smooth English tinged with a soft, polite soul accent, asking for anything sweet to survive a brutal corporate night. When their hands brushed over a paper bag, neither expected that a 9-year-old watching from the corner, with a color-coded notebook, was already mapping out their future, steering two completely different worlds directly into each other. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Get your favorite drink, settle into a comfortable spot, and take a quick second to drop a comment right now telling me where you are watching from today. Whether you are tuning in from New York, Toronto, London, or anywhere else across the globe, I love seeing where our amazing community gathers every single week. Let us dive right into the story. The flower dusted her dark forearms all the way up to her elbows, leaving soft white smudges against her skin as she worked near the warm ovens. Imani loved the quiet hum of her bakery after hours. The space smelled like melted butter, toasted cinnamon, and vanilla bean, a combination that always settled her soul after a long afternoon. Across the room on a tall stool, 9-year-old Malia sat with her chin propped in her hand, staring intently at an open leather notebook. "You are making that serious face again," Imani said, using the back of her wrist to push a stray curl away from her forehead. "The one you make when you are planning to reorganize my entire pantry." Malia did not look up from her page. "Your pantry is fine for now, Mom. I am reviewing your work schedule. You have 3 custom cake orders for a wedding in Toronto next week, a school charity sale on Friday, and you forgot to sit down and rest for even 5 minutes today." "I rest when I sleep, sweetie," Imani replied with a gentle smile, walking over to place a fresh, warm pastry onto a small plate in front of her daughter. "Sleeping 4 hours a night is not resting," Malia said, her soft eyes rising to meet her mother's. "You work too hard for everyone else. Someone needs to take care of you for a change." Imani felt a tender ache in her chest. She leaned down, pressing a soft kiss against Malia's temple. "I have you. That makes me richer than anyone in this city." Before Malia could respond, the brass bell above the front door jingled softly. Imani turned in surprise. The open sign had been turned to closed 20 minutes ago, but the rain outside was coming down in steady, gray sheets against the glass. Standing in the doorway was a man shaking water from a dark umbrella. He was tall, dressed in a sharp charcoal coat over a tailored suit that marked him as someone straight out of the financial district down the street. His dark hair was slightly damp, falling gently over his brow, framing a handsome face with high cheekbones and quiet, intelligent eyes that looked thoroughly exhausted. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone with a light, refined Korean accent that gave his words a soft cadence. "I saw the light on inside and took a chance. The rain is relentless tonight." "We are technically closed," Imani began, stepping toward the counter. But as her eyes met his, the rest of the sentence caught in her throat. There was an earnest, gentle warmth in his gaze that instantly made the quiet shop feel smaller, intimate, in a way that made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "I understand," he said quickly, offering a polite, subtle bow of his head. "I do not want to intrude."
"I saw the light on inside and took a chance. The rain is relentless tonight."
Imani smiled, her chest loosening as she wiped her hands on her apron. "Well,
But leaving someone out in a Chicago rainstorm goes against my personal policy. Come in out of the cold."
I just pulled a fresh tray of sweet potato loaves from the oven." The man stepped closer to the counter, the tense set of his shoulders visibly relaxing as the smell of fresh baking hit him. "That sounds like heaven," he murmured. "My name is Woo Jin." "Imani," she replied, reaching for a parchment bag. "And the young lady judging your posture from the corner is Malia." Woo Jin turned his head toward Malia, his tired expression breaking into a genuine, beautiful smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He bowed slightly to her as well. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Miss Malia." Malia adjusted herself on her stool, looking him up and down with intense curiosity. "You speak like my teacher who moved here from Seoul," she observed plainly. "But your suit looks like the ones people wear in high-rise offices in London." "Malia," Imani warned gently, her cheeks warming with a faint blush. Please excuse her. She notices everything. No, she is completely right, Wu Jin said with a soft laugh that sounded rich and comforting in the quiet room. I just got back from our branch in London 2 weeks ago, and my main headquarters are in Seoul. I am still trying to adjust to the time difference. He looked back at Imani as she handed him the warm paper bag. Their fingers brushed briefly over the folded edge of the paper. A small electric jolt seemed to pass between them, quiet but undeniable. Wu Jin froze for a fraction of a second, his dark eyes locking onto hers with a sudden, intense focus that made Imani's breath catch in her throat. "Thank you, Imani," he said softly, his tone dropping into something far deeper than a casual transaction. "You have no idea how much I needed this tonight." "I am glad I could help," she whispered back, unable to break his gaze. Wu Jin paid, refusing his change with a polite gesture, and backed toward the door. He paused on the threshold, looking back at her one last time, with an expression that held a quiet promise, before stepping out into the rainy night. Later that night, the quiet of their apartment above the bakery was broken only by the soft patter of rain against the window pane. Imani sat on the edge of her bed, after tucking Malia in, staring down at her own hands. She touched her fingertips where they had briefly brushed against Wu Jin's. It felt silly, almost teenage, to feel this shaken by a stranger buying bread. For 4 years, ever since she walked away from a painful past that left her raising Malia alone, Imani had built thick, invisible walls around her heart. She had told herself that her life was full enough with her bakery, her daughter, and her quiet peace. Yet the memory of Wu Jin's soft voice and the gentle, respectful way he had looked at her kept echoing in her mind, making her feel things she thought she had buried long ago. In the small bedroom down the hall, Malia sat up under her blanket, holding her iPad. She opened a fresh document, her small fingers typing out a new title across the top of the screen. Operation New Dad. She added a single entry below it. Wu Jin, polite, speaks nicely, looks at mom like she is important. Step 1, initiated. The next day. The glass tower of Moon Enterprises rose high above the city skyline, overlooking the cold waters of Lake Michigan. High up on the top floor, Wu Jin sat behind a massive glass desk, staring out at the clouds. Spread out before him were 3 financial reports detailing a massive upcoming merger, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. His door clicked open, and his executive assistant, Grace, walked in carrying a steaming cup of dark coffee and a fresh tablet. "Your 10 o'clock meeting with the Toronto Investment Group has been moved to 2 p.m., sir," Grace said in her usual crisp, professional tone. "And your father called twice from Seoul regarding the Halcyon partnership. He wants to know if you have reviewed the matchmaker profiles his secretary sent over." Wu Jin let out a heavy sigh, running a hand through his dark hair. "Tell my father, I am focused on the Chicago operations right now. I do not have time for arranged introductions." Grace set the coffee down, eyeing him shrewdly. "You look different today, Director Moon. You usually look like you want to fight the wall. Today you look distracted." "I met someone last night," Wu Jin said before he could stop himself. He looked down at the empty parchment bag resting on the corner of his mahogany desk, still faintly smelling of sweet potato and brown sugar. "A baker." Grace raised an eyebrow, a tiny smile twitching at her lips. "A baker. Should I cancel your afternoon meeting so you can go buy more carbohydrates?" Wu Jin smiled, a warm light washing over his face. "No, but find out if Riverside Elementary is holding their annual charity bake sale this Friday. I remember our company sponsored their library fund last year." A few days later, the school gymnasium was a noisy, bright chaos of colorful streamers, tables piled high with homemade goods, and screaming children running between booths. Imani stood behind her bakery setup, adjusting a tray of glazed donuts. She wore a simple burgundy sweater that complemented her rich brown skin, her natural hair styled in a chic, soft updo. Malia stood next to her, wearing her blazer over her school uniform, holding her tablet like an inspector. "He is here," Malia whispered suddenly. Imani blinked. "Who is here?" "Target acquired," Malia said smoothly, pointing a tiny finger toward the entrance of the gym. Imani turned her head and almost dropped her spatula. Walking through the double doors was Wu Jin. He was dressed in a dark navy sweater over a white-collared shirt, looking relaxed, devastatingly handsome, and completely out of place among the suburban parents. He was carrying an enormous, ornate gift basket wrapped in cellophane. Wu Jin's eyes swept across the crowded room until they landed directly on Imani. A soft, brilliant smile broke across his face, and he immediately started walking toward her, ignoring the curious glances from other parents around him. "You actually came," Imani said as he reached her table, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "I had to," Wu Jin said gently, setting the heavy basket down on the floor beside her counter. "Our company sponsors the library fund, and I heard the best baker in Illinois was going to be here. I could not risk missing out." "You came all the way across town for pastries?" she asked, a teasing spark in her brown eyes, though her voice shook slightly with genuine emotion. "I came across town to see you, Imani," Wu Jin said softly, his eyes locking onto hers with total, unwavering honesty. "The pastries are just a very fortunate bonus." Imani felt a wave of heat rush to her cheeks, her breath hitching. The directness of his words sent a sweet, trembling warmth straight through her chest. Before she could form a reply, an elegant elderly woman stepped up beside Wu Jin. She wore a tailored cream silk coat, her silver hair arranged in a flawless, traditional style, her sharp eyes scanning the room with regal authority. "Wu Jin," the elderly woman said in clear, commanding Korean before switching smoothly to polished English. "You left me near the parking area to carry my own purse, and now I find you hiding near the suites." "Halmioni," Wu Jin said respectfully, immediately straightening his posture and taking her arm. "I am sorry. Please let me introduce you. This is my grandmother, Jung Suk," Wu Jin said softly to Imani. "She arrived from London yesterday to visit our U.S. office. Halmioni, this is Imani, the gifted baker I told you about, and her daughter Malia." Grandmother Jung Suk looked at Imani, her sharp eyes softening instantly as she took in Imani's warm face, her gentle posture, and the quiet dignity in her posture. Then her eyes drifted down to Malia, who bowed her head politely in a traditional gesture she had practiced online that morning. Jung Suk let out a low, delighted gasp. "Look at this precious child," she murmured, stepping closer to Imani and reaching out to take both of Imani's hands into her own warm palms. "Wu Jin told me your sweet potato bread was magnificent, my dear, but he forgot to mention that your smile lights up this entire cold room." Imani was stunned by the older woman's immediate, overwhelming warmth. "Thank you, ma'am. It is an honor to meet you." "You will call me Halmioni," Jung Suk insisted with a firm, loving smile. "And you will both come to our home in the suburbs tomorrow evening for dinner. I am tired of hotel food, and I want a proper family meal." Wu Jin looked horrified. "Halmioni, please, they have a business to run. You cannot just demand—" "I am not demanding. I am inviting," Jung Suk interrupted, waving her hand dismissively at her grandson before winking at Malia. "You will bring your mother tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Understand, little one?" Malia smiled triumphantly. "We will be there, Halmioni." Later that evening, in a private suite downtown, Grandmother Jung Suk sat drinking green tea while Wu Jin paced back and forth near the window. "You are going to scare her away, Halmioni," Wu Jin said, turning to face his grandmother. "She is a quiet, hard-working woman who has built a peaceful life for her child. She does not need the drama of our family business or my father's corporate games." Jung Suk set her teacup down with a soft click. "Wu Jin, look at me." Wu Jin stopped pacing and looked at his grandmother. "In 5 years, I have not seen you smile the way you smiled at that woman today," Jung Suk said gently, her voice filled with deep, maternal affection. "Your father wants you to marry a contract to secure board votes in Seoul. But I want you to live a life that fills your heart. That girl has grace, strength, and love in her eyes. Do not let your fear stand in the way of what is real." Wu Jin closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as the truth of her words settled into his soul. The next morning, the bakery kitchen was quiet as Imani prepped her morning dough. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting soft golden light across the stainless steel counters. The back bell chimed softly. Imani turned, expecting a delivery driver, but found Wu Jin standing near the back door holding two steaming paper cups from a local coffee shop. "I hope I am not intruding," Wu Jin said softly, stopping a few feet away. "I wanted to apologize for my grandmother yesterday. She can be overwhelming." Imani set her mixing spoon down, her heart softening at the sight of him standing there in the quiet dawn. She walked over, taking one of the coffee cups from his hand. "She was lovely, Wu Jin," Imani said gently. "You do not need to apologize for someone loving you enough to want good things for you." Wu Jin looked down at her, his eyes shining with an emotion so raw and clear that it made her chest ache with sweet intensity. "I was afraid," he admitted quietly, stepping closer until only a few inches separated them. "I was afraid that if you saw the complexity of my world, you would push me away. I know you have built a safe boundary around your life, Imani. I can see how carefully you protect your heart. But I want you to know, I am not here for a quick distraction. I have not stopped thinking about you since the moment I stepped into your shop." Imani felt tears prickling behind her eyes, a knot of deep, emotional vulnerability loosening in her throat. It had been so long since anyone had looked at her with such protective, tender devotion. "Wu Jin," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "My life is complicated. I have Malia, I have my business, and I cannot afford to get hurt." "Then let me earn your trust," Wu Jin said, gently raising his hand. He hesitated, waiting for her permission, before softly resting his knuckles against the curve of her cheek. His skin was warm, his touch so unbelievably tender that Imani closed her eyes for a second, leaning into his hand. "I am not going anywhere, Imani. Not unless you ask me to leave." "I do not want you to leave," she confessed softly, opening her eyes to look into his. Wu Jin smiled, his thumb gently brushing across her cheekbone before he reluctantly pulled his hand back. "Then come to dinner tonight, just as yourselves. No expectations, no corporate pressure, just us." Imani looked at his gentle face, feeling a quiet courage settle over her heart. "Okay," she whispered. "We will come." The sun set over the suburbs, painting the sky in deep shades of violet and crushed velvet. But inside the Moon family estate, the atmosphere felt more like a chess match, where someone had accidentally replaced the pieces with cinnamon rolls. Imani smoothed down the front of her dark emerald dress, taking a steadying breath on the front porch. Beside her, Malia adjusted her small blazer, checked her tablet, and gave a tiny, satisfied nod. "If this dinner goes south, Mom," Malia whispered, keeping her eyes on the massive double doors, "I have a backup plan that involves us discreetly retreating to the car while I release a very compelling rumor about their quarterly earnings." "Malia, please," Imani said, though a soft, nervous laugh escaped her lips. "We are guests. We eat politely, we say thank you, and we do not crash any stock markets tonight." Before Malia could offer a counter-proposal, the heavy oak doors swung open, revealing Wu Jin. He had traded his usual formal dark suits for a soft, cream-colored cashmere sweater that somehow made him look even more devastatingly handsome. The instant his eyes fell on Imani, his expression softened into a look of such open, unshielded warmth that Imani felt her heart do a ridiculous little flip in her chest. "You look stunning," Wu Jin said softly, stepping aside to let them in. The gentle depth of his voice seemed to wrap around her like a warm blanket on a freezing night. "Thank you," Imani murmured, stepping into the grand foyer. "You look remarkably relaxed for a man hosting a dinner under his grandmother's orders." "I am surviving," Wu Jin smiled, his eyes lingering on hers with a sweet, quiet intensity that made the massive foyer feel entirely private. "Though my grandmother has already rewritten the seating chart 3 times to ensure you and I are sitting next to each other." "Good," Malia chimed in, walking past them with total confidence. "That saves me from having to reassign the seats myself." Wu Jin laughed, a rich, genuine sound that echoed off the high marble ceilings. He led them through a hallway lined with traditional art and warm lighting into a dining room that managed to feel cozy despite its incredible scale. At the center of the mahogany table sat Grandmother Jung-suk, looking regal in a soft plum silk blouse. But the moment she saw Imani and Malia, her sharp, stately posture melted into pure joy. "Ah! My favorite guests have arrived!" Jung-suk announced, standing up with open arms. Woo-jin, stop staring at Imani like she is a rare museum painting and help her with her coat. Halmione, Woo-jin said softly, his cheeks flushing a light, endearing shade of pink as he gently helped Imani out of her coat. His fingers brushed lightly against her shoulders, sending a sweet, tingling warmth straight down her spine. I am being a polite host. You are being slow, Jung-suk teased, winking at Imani. Come, sit down. Tonight, no corporate talk. Only good food and better company. Dinner was a beautiful, chaotic blend of cultures and laughter. Jung-suk insisted on serving traditional Korean dishes, alongside freshly baked rolls that Imani had brought from her shop. Across the table, Malia held court, explaining the finer points of her elementary school's playground politics, while Jung-suk listened with absolute rapt attention, taking serious mental notes. So you are telling me, Jung-suk said, holding up a piece of kimchi with her chopsticks, that this little boy named Leo traded a juice box for prime real estate near the swings. It was a total monopoly, Halmione, Malia explained with grave seriousness. I had to step in and regulate the market. Woo-jin leaned closer to Imani, his shoulder brushing against hers. He leaned in so close she could feel the faint, warm whisper of his breath against her ear. She is formidable, he murmured softly, a fond, amused smile playing on his lips. I think my grandmother has finally met her match. Imani looked at him, her heart swelling with an emotion so sweet and heavy it almost took her breath away. She loved the way Woo-jin looked at her daughter, not as a burden or an afterthought, but with genuine affection and deep respect. She gets it from her mother, Imani whispered back, turning her head slightly. Woo-jin's eyes dipped to her lips for a fraction of a second, before meeting her gaze again. His dark eyes were soft, filled with a quiet, glowing tenderness. Then her mother must be the most formidable woman in this entire city, he said gently, his voice dropping into a low, intimate register that made Imani's pulse flutter wildly. Before the sweet moment could stretch any further, the heavy dining room doors clicked open. Standing in the doorway was a tall, sharply dressed man in his late 50s with a stern, rigid jawline and a cold, calculating presence that instantly shifted the warm air in the room. Beside him stood a stunning young woman in an icy blue designer dress, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Woo-jin's posture instantly straightened, the relaxed warmth leaving his frame, replaced by a defensive, protective edge as he shifted subtly in his chair to put himself slightly between the newcomer and Imani. Father, Woo-jin said, his voice dropping into a controlled, formal tone. I did not expect you back from Seoul until Thursday. Dae-hyun stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the table, before resting on Imani and Malia, with a look of cold, aristocratic confusion. I moved my flight up, Dae-hyun said crisply in polished English, his tone smooth yet sharp as glass. The merger vote with the Park family is in 3 days, Woo-jin. I brought Seo-yeon so the two of you could finalize the press statement regarding your upcoming courtship. The room went dead silent. Imani felt the atmosphere drop by 20 degrees. She looked down at her plate, a sudden cold knot forming in her stomach. Courtship? Press statement? The fragile, sweet bubble they had spent the entire evening building suddenly felt paper-thin against the reality of Woo-jin's wealthy corporate world. Woo-jin stood up smoothly from the table. His voice was low, but it carried an unshakable, fierce authority that Imani had never heard from him before. Father, you are out of line, Woo-jin said firmly, his eyes burning with quiet anger. I told you on the phone, and I am telling you here in front of our family, I will not be part of any arrangement to secure votes. My life is not a bargaining chip. Dae-hyun's eyes narrowed. Woo-jin, do not be naive. You have a duty to this company and this family. He has a duty to his own heart. Jung-suk interrupted, slamming her teacup down onto its saucer with a sharp click that made even Dae-hyun flinch. Dae-hyun, you walked into my dining room without an invitation, interrupted a peaceful dinner, and brought business into a home that belongs to me. Sit down, shut your mouth, or leave. The young woman in the blue dress, Seo-yeon, let out a tiny, relieved sigh, stepping back toward the hallway. I told you this was a bad idea, Mr. Moon, she murmured softly to Dae-hyun, before looking at Wu Jin with a sympathetic, apologetic smile. I am sorry for the intrusion, Wu Jin. Good night. Seo Yeon turned and walked away, leaving Dae-hyun standing alone in the doorway, his face tight with quiet rage. He looked at Imani, then at Wu Jin, before turning on his heel and exiting without another word. The heavy silence settled back over the room. Imani sat frozen, her chest tight, her mind racing. The reality of Wu Jin's life, the massive expectations, the family pressure, the corporate schemes, felt like a wall towering over her small, peaceful world. A soft, warm hand gently wrapped around hers beneath the table. Imani looked up. Wu Jin was looking down at her, ignoring his grandmother, ignoring the doorway, ignoring the entire world. His hand held hers with a firm, protective grip that refused to let go. Look at me, Imani, Wu Jin pleaded softly, his voice trembling with genuine, raw emotion. Please. None of that matters to me. None of it. Wu Jin, Imani whispered, her voice laced with deep, heart-wrenching honesty. Your world is so big, and mine is just a bakery and my daughter. I cannot let Malia get caught in the middle of a corporate war. I am not asking you to join a war, Wu Jin said, stepping closer and kneeling down beside her chair so he was at eye level with her. He reached up, his long fingers gently cupping her jaw, his thumb brushing away a stray tear that had slipped down her cheek. His touch was so infinitely tender, so full of devotion, that Imani felt her heart aching with a sweetness that almost hurt. I am asking you to let me stand in front of you. I will fight my father. I will fight the board. I will fight anyone I have to, if it means I get to earn a place by your side. Imani stared into his dark, sincere eyes, seeing the utter truth in his words. She felt her breath catch, her hand reaching up to rest over his where it held her face. Before she could answer, Malia leaned over from her chair, holding her tablet out toward them. If you two are done having an intense movie moment, Malia said, her small voice breaking the heavy tension with perfect comedic timing. I just accessed the public property records for your father's corporate building. Halmione, did you know your name is still listed as the primary title holder on the land? Young Suk paused, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across her face. Is it really, my little genius? It is, Malia smiled innocently. Which means legally, he cannot host the merger meeting in that building on Friday without your written permission. Jung Suk burst into a delighted, ringing laugh, clapping her hands together. Oh, I love this child. Wu Jin, marry this family immediately. Wu Jin chuckled, a deep, relieved sound, though his eyes never left Imani's face. I am working on it, Halmione, he murmured softly, his thumb gently caressing Imani's cheek. Later that night, Wu Jin drove Imani and Malia back to their apartment. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city streets shining under the amber glow of the streetlights. Malia had fallen fast asleep in the back seat, clutching her tablet like a prized trophy. Wu Jin parked the car outside the bakery, turning off the engine. The quiet interior of the car felt intimate, filled with the soft, lingering warmth of everything they had shared. Thank you for tonight, Imani said softly, looking over at him. And thank you for standing up for us. I will always stand up for you, Imani, Wu Jin said softly, turning in his seat to face her. He reached out, his hand gently settling over hers on the armrest. Imani did not pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up, lacing her fingers with his. The simple connection felt incredibly profound, a quiet pact forged in the stillness of the night. I should get Malia inside, she whispered, though she made no move to let go of his hand. Wu Jin smiled, leaning in just a fraction closer. His gaze drifted to her lips, then back to her eyes, his expression holding a sweet, unspoken question. Can I see you tomorrow? Just us? No corporate drama, no spreadsheets, no grandmothers, just coffee. Imani felt a soft, beautiful warmth bloom in her chest. I would like that, she whispered back. Wu Jin leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss against the back of her hand, his lips warm against her skin, sending a delicious shiver straight through her. Good night, Imani. Good night, Wu Jin. A few days later, the morning of the merger vote arrived, crisp and sunny. The bakery was filled with the usual comforting scent of fresh pastry and coffee. Imani was at the counter, humming softly to herself, a gentle, radiant glow about her that had not faded since that night at the estate. The front bell chimed softly. Imani looked up, expecting to see Wu Jin walking in with his usual warm smile. Instead, a woman walked into the shop. She was impeccably dressed in a sharp black suit, carrying an expensive leather handbag. Her face was beautiful, but her eyes were guarded, uncertain. It was Seo Yeon. Imani straightened up, setting her cloth down on the counter. "May I help you?" Seo Yeon stopped near the display case, looking around the cozy, warm shop before setting her gaze on Imani. "You are Imani," she said softly, her tone surprisingly gentle, devoid of any hostility. "I am Seo Yeon. I know who you are," Imani said calmly, her heart beating a little faster, though she kept her posture steady and dignified. "I came here because I wanted to tell you the truth," Seo Yeon said, taking a slow step closer. "My father and Wu Jin's father have been pushing for our marriage for 2 years, but Wu Jin has refused every single attempt. He told his father that he would rather lose his entire inheritance than marry someone he did not love." Imani blinked, a soft wave of emotion washing over her chest. "I thought he was just being stubborn," Seo Yeon continued, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. "But after seeing the way he looked at you at that dinner, I understood. He looks at you like you are his entire world, Imani." "Thank you for telling me that," Imani whispered, feeling a deep warmth bloom in her heart. Seo Yeon nodded gently, turning toward the door, but as she opened it, she paused, looking back over her shoulder with a sudden, serious expression that made Imani's stomach drop. "There is one more thing you need to know," Seo Yeon said, her voice dropping. "Wu Jin's father found out about the title restriction on the corporate building. He knows Malia helped your grandmother find it. He is heading to the board meeting right now to force an emergency vote to strip Wu Jin of his title as CEO before the merger closes at noon." Imani's eyes widened in shock. "What? If Wu Jin loses his title today, he loses everything he has spent 10 years building," Seo Yeon warned. "And his father is using a confidential file about your past to prove to the board that Wu Jin has compromised his judgment." Imani felt the air leave her lungs. "My past?" Seo Yeon nodded gravely. "Someone sent Wu Jin's father a private file from a man named Marcus. He is planning to read it to the board in 30 minutes. I cannot believe we ended on a moment like that. What is in that file, and why is Marcus trying to ruin everything?" Before we move on to the next part, I need to know what you think. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think Wu Jin's father is going to succeed, or is grandmother Jung Suk about to pull off the ultimate boss move? Type Team Wu Jin in the comments right now. And if you are loving this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss a single second when the next part drops. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from today, and I will see you all in the next video. The clock on the wall of the bakery ticked loudly, each second sounding like a hammer striking an anvil. 11:15 a.m. 30 minutes until the board meeting. 30 minutes until Dae-hyun used a ghost from her past to destroy the man who had brought light back into her life. Seo Yeon left, the door chime lingering in the quiet air. Imani stood frozen behind the counter, her mind spinning, her chest tight with a suffocating weight. "Mom?" Malia's soft voice broke through the fog. She was holding her small yellow lunchbox, her eyes wide as she looked up at her mother. "Is that bad man trying to do something mean again?" Imani looked down at her daughter, taking a deep, ragged breath. She knelt, cupping Malia's small shoulders. "Sweetheart, I need you to stay here with Miss Clara from next door for a little while. I have to go stop something." "Are you going to beat him up?" Malia asked, her forehead scrunching into a surprisingly fierce look. "Because I can come with you. I brought my metal water bottle." Imani could not help the short, watery laugh that escaped her lips. "No water bottles required, my brave girl. Just a very fast taxi." 10 minutes later, Imani was sitting in the back of a yellow cab, staring out the window as the Chicago skyline blurred past. Her fingers trembled against her knees. She pulled out her phone, dialing Wu Jin's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He was already in the high-rise, likely preparing for the execution of his career. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. 4 years ago, before she moved to Chicago, before she built her peaceful world, there was Marcus. A charismatic, manipulative ex who had taken her savings, buried her name in debt, and left her fighting legal battles just to keep custody of Malia. She had fought tooth and nail to clear her name, legally rectifying every single accusation. But on paper, to a conservative corporate board, a sensationalized court record looked like scandal. She could not let Dae-hyun use her old scars as a weapon against Woo Jin. The taxi slammed to a halt outside the towering glass facade of Moon Enterprises. Imani paid the driver, pushed through the heavy revolving doors, and stepped into the massive, marble-lined lobby. Security guards in sleek black suits stood near the polished turnstiles. "Ma'am, do you have an appointment?" a sharp guard asked, stepping into her path. "I need to see Director Woo Jin Moon," Imani said, her voice clear, steady, and carrying an authority she did not even know she possessed. "It is urgent. I am sorry, the executive floors are closed for a board meeting." He did not get to finish. Out of the elevator bank strutted grandmother Jung-suk. She was wearing a stunning, tailored crimson suit, carrying a heavy silver cane that clicked loudly with every stride, and trailing 2 corporate lawyers who looked thoroughly terrified of her. "Move aside," Jung-suk commanded the guard, not even slowing her pace. "She is with me." The guard blinked, immediately stepping back with a bow. "Yes, Mrs. Moon." Imani caught up to Jung-suk as the elevator doors opened. "Thank you, Halmioni," Imani breathed out, her chest heaving. "How did you know I was here?" "Malia called my iPad 7 minutes ago," Jung-suk said, a proud, lethal smirk playing on her lips. "She gave me a full tactical update, told me you were in a taxi, and advised me to bring the legal land titles. That child is getting a chair on the board when she turns 18. Imani smiled through her anxiety, stepping into the elevator. "But Halmioni, Dae-hyun has a file. Marcus gave him documents about my past. He is going to try to ruin Woo Jin's reputation to steal the CEO position." Jung-suk adjusted her pearl necklace, her eyes dark with absolute, icy confidence. "Let him try, my dear. A man who fights with dirt only succeeds in dirtying his own hands. Today, we sweep the floor." The elevator dinged on the top floor. The glass doors of the grand boardroom were closed, but through the frosted glass, low, tense voices could be heard. Inside, 40 board members sat around a horseshoe-shaped mahogany table. At the front stood Woo Jin, looking calm, composed, and strikingly handsome in a charcoal suit, though the tight set of his jaw betrayed his internal stress. Standing at the podium was his father, Dae-hyun, holding a thick manila folder. Before the board votes on the merger, Dae-hyun's voice echoed through the speaker system. "I must present evidence that Director Woo Jin's personal judgment has been severely compromised by a woman with a questionable legal history." Woo Jin's eyes snapped to his father, a sudden protective fury blazing in his dark eyes. "Father, keep her name out of this room. I am protecting this company," Dae-hyun barked, lifting the file. This file contains records from a Marcus Vance, detailing financial irregularities and legal disputes involving the woman Woo Jin is currently pursuing. The heavy double doors of the boardroom flew open with a resounding bang. Every single head turned. Imani walked into the room. She was not wearing designer clothes or corporate silk. She was in her simple dark dress, her head held high, her posture graceful and unyielding. Behind her walked Jung-suk, tapping her silver cane against the hard floor with deliberate, dramatic rhythm. Woo Jin's breath caught in his throat. His entire expression transformed from anger to pure, unadulterated awe as he watched her walk straight toward the center of the room. He immediately stepped away from the podium, moving to stand beside her, his fingers instinctively finding hers and wrapping around them in a firm, protective clasp. "Are you okay?" Woo Jin whispered, his eyes searching her face with deep, tender concern. "You do not have to be here. I am right where I belong," Imani whispered back, her soft brown eyes locking onto his with absolute trust, squeezing his hand. Dae-hyun slammed his hand on the podium. "This is a private board meeting. Security, Security works for the person who pays the building lease, Jung-suk interrupted smoothly, taking a seat at the head of the table without anyone offering it to her. And since my name is on the title of this tower, Dae-hyun, you are technically trespassing if I decide I do not like your tone. The board members began whispering frantically among themselves. Imani stepped forward, gently letting go of Woo-jin's hand to face the entire room. Her voice was calm, melodic, but carrying a weight that commanded complete silence. The file in Mr. Moon's hand contains truth, but only half of it, Imani began, looking straight at the board members. 4 years ago, I was betrayed by a man named Marcus who stole my life savings and attempted to frame me to cover his own debts. I spent 2 years in court, fighting alone while raising my daughter, until a judge completely exonerated me and returned every penny. She turned her gaze to Dae-hyun, her eyes clear and unbothered. If Mr. Moon thinks that surviving a betrayal and fighting for my daughter makes me a liability, he is mistaken, Imani said softly, a tiny proud smile touching her lips. It made me strong, it made me careful, and it taught me how to recognize real honor, which is exactly what I saw in Woo-jin the moment he stepped into my shop. The room was dead quiet. Several older board members were nodding in quiet respect. Woo-jin looked at Imani, his chest swelling with an emotion so powerful, so sweet, it made his eyes burn with unshed tears. He did not care about the CEO title. He did not care about the merger. He only cared about the extraordinary woman standing beside him. Dae-hyun's face turned red. Honor does not pay dividends. He is throwing away our family legacy for... He is building his own legacy. Jung-suk snapped, standing up and tossing a stack of legal documents onto the table. And as the majority shareholder of the Moon Foundation, I am casting my vote today. I vote to approve the merger, and I vote to officially name Director Woo-jin Moon as the sole chairman of Moon Enterprises. A wave of applause broke out among the board members. Dae-hyun stood frozen, his file useless in his hand, his authority completely dismantled. Woo-jin did not even wait for the applause to settle. He turned to Imani, stepped close, and cupped her face in both of his warm hands. "You are incredible," Woo-jin whispered, his voice thick with raw, overwhelming emotion. His dark eyes searched hers, filled with a gentle, boundless love. "I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do," Imani murmured, tears of relief finally slipping down her cheeks as she smiled up at him. Woo-jin leaned down, pressing his forehead against hers, closing his eyes as he breathed her in. "I love you, Imani. I think I have loved you since the second I walked into your bakery smelling like rain and defeat." Imani felt her heart soar, her hands resting over his on her cheeks. "I love you too, Woo-jin." Later that night, the victory celebration was small, intimate, and held in the cozy dining room of the bakery. The open sign was turned off, soft golden lights strung across the windows, filling the space with a warm, magical glow. Malia sat on a counter stool, eating a large slice of cake, while Jung-suk showed her how to play a traditional Korean card game on the table. "You are playing the wrong card, Halmione," Malia pointed out, tapping a card with her fork. "If you drop that one, I take all your points." Jung-suk narrowed her eyes playfully. "You are a ruthless business partner, Malia. I love it." At the back of the shop near the open display cases, Woo-jin and Imani stood close together. Woo-jin had shed his suit jacket, his collar unbuttoned, looking entirely relaxed, happy, and deeply in love. He held a small glass of sparkling apple cider, his free arm loosely wrapped around Imani's waist, pulling her flush against his side. Imani leaned her head against his shoulder, listening to the soft hum of laughter from her daughter and his grandmother. It felt surreal, like a beautiful dream she never wanted to wake up from. "So, Chairman Moon," Imani teased softly, poking his chest, "what is your first executive decision tomorrow morning?" Woo-jin looked down at her, his eyes soft and dark in the dim light. "My first decision is to delegate all my morning meetings so I can come here and eat sweet potato bread. My second decision is to ask you a very serious question." Imani looked up, her pulse picking up a sweet, fluttering rhythm. "Oh? And what question is that?" Woo-jin reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Imani's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened, her heart pounding wildly against her ribs. Woojin, is that... I know we met in the rain just a few weeks ago, Woojin said gently, his voice smooth and trembling with genuine emotion. I know people might say we are moving fast, but when you find the person who makes your heart quiet, when you find the person who feels like home, waiting even one more day feels like a waste of time. He opened the box, revealing a simple, breathtaking ring set with a brilliant, conflict-free diamond that sparkled in the warm bakery light. Imani touched her lips, tears filling her eyes, unable to speak. Before Woojin could say another word, the heavy front door of the bakery burst open.
Stop! You can't marry him! Get out of here right now.
Holding a thick, brown envelope in his shaking hands. Imani, the man shouted, his voice echoing loudly in the quiet shop. Imani turned, her blood running cold as she recognized the sharp, arrogant face she had hoped never to see again. Marcus, do not touch that ring, Marcus yelled, taking an erratic step toward them. He is lying to you, Imani. His family didn't just buy my files. They bought your father's old business 10 years ago. The Moon family is the reason your family lost everything in the first place. What? Did Marcus just drop the biggest bomb in history, or is he playing one last desperate card to destroy their happiness? I cannot believe it ended right there. I need everyone in the comments right now. Do you think Marcus is telling the truth, or is he just a bitter ex trying to ruin the sweetest proposal ever? Type "Believe Woojin" or "Trust Marcus" in the comments down below. If you are as hooked on this story as I am, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you get alerted for any drops. Drop your country in the comments too, and I will see you all in the next episode. The heavy brown envelope in Marcus's hands trembled, but the malice in his eyes was steady and sharp. Rain dripped from his muddy coat onto the clean tile floor, cutting straight through the warm, sweet scent of fresh cinnamon and vanilla. Imani felt as though the air had been sucked completely out of the room. She froze, her eyes shifting from Marcus's frantic, rain-soaked face down to the velvet box still held open in Woojin's hand. "Get out of here, Marcus," Woojin said, his voice dropping into a dangerous, icy tone. He did not look flustered, but he immediately stepped directly in front of Imani, his body shielding her from the sudden intruder. "You have caused enough damage. I am saving her from you," Marcus spat, taking another erratic step forward, holding out the envelope like a weapon. "Ask him, Imani. Ask the great Chairman Moon what his father did 15 years ago when your dad was running his bakery equipment business in Detroit. Ask him who bought up all your father's supply lines and drove him into bankruptcy." In the corner of the room, Malia slowly reached for her small metal water bottle, her 9-year-old face drawn up in total fierce concentration. Grandmother Jung-suk held up a single hand, stopping the little girl with a quiet gesture, though the older woman's sharp eyes were fixed on Marcus with pure disgust. Imani took a slow, trembling breath, gently touching Woojin's arm. Woojin shifted slightly, looking down at her with eyes filled with sudden, agonizing worry. "Woojin?" Imani whispered, her voice barely carrying across the small space. Is there any truth to what he is saying?" Woojin's jaw tightened, a look of profound, heart-wrenching pain crossing his handsome features. He did not look away from her. He could not lie to her. Not now, not ever. "My father's acquisition firm bought several regional logistics companies 15 years ago. Imani," Woojin confessed softly, his voice thick with raw honesty. "I was a teenager in Seoul at the time. I did not know about it until 2 days ago when I started digging into my father's old business records to make sure he had no leverage left to hurt you." "So it is true," Marcus yelled, a triumphant, sickening smile spreading across his face. "His family destroyed yours, Imani. He is just trying to fix his guilty conscience by buying you a diamond ring." Silence hung heavy in the room. Imani stood completely still, processing the weight of the revelation. Her father had worked himself into an early grave trying to save that business. All those years of struggle, of scraped-together meals and endless stress, had been caused by the ruthless corporate expansion of Moon Enterprises. She looked at Woojin. His face was pale, his dark eyes filled with a quiet, devastating fear that she would turn away from him forever. He held his breath, waiting for her judgment. Imani took a step around Woojin, walking directly toward Marcus. "You came all the way here in the rain," Imani said, her voice smooth, quiet, and shockingly calm. "Just to deliver bad news?" Marcus blinked, thrown off by her composure. "I came to show you who he really is. He is a moon." "No," Imani said, stopping 3 feet away from him, her head held high. "You came here because you are a weak, bitter man who cannot stand to see me happy. You stole from me, you lied to me, and when that failed, you went digging through 15-year-old corporate archives just to find something to break my heart." "Imani!" Marcus argued, waving the envelope. "His family! His father did that," Imani interrupted, her voice rising with a clear, unshakable authority that made Marcus snap his mouth shut. A ruthless man whom Wu Jin just risked his entire career, his reputation, and his life's work to defeat today. She turned around and looked back at Wu Jin. The color was slowly returning to his face, his eyes shining with a profound, tearful gratitude that made her chest ache with pure tenderness. "Wu Jin did not destroy my father's business," Imani said softly, walking back to the man she loved and taking his hand in hers. "Wu Jin is the man who stood in front of a 40-person corporate board today and defended my name. He is the man who makes my daughter laugh, who respects my hard work, and who loved me before he even knew my name." Wu Jin closed his eyes for a second, letting out a ragged sigh of total relief, his fingers squeezing hers with ferocious warmth. Now Grandmother Jung-suk's voice sliced through the air like a silver blade. The elderly woman stood up from her chair, her cane clicking heavily on the floor as she walked over to Marcus. She looked him up and down with absolute royal disdain. "Young man," Jung-suk said smoothly, "if you do not step out of this bakery in the next 3 seconds, I will not only have you arrested for trespassing, but I will also personally fund 3 separate civil lawsuits against you for corporate harassment and intent to commit fraud. My lawyers love a good warm-up in the evening." Malia held up her tablet, smiling innocently. "And I already recorded your full confession on HD video, including the part where you admitted to stalking my mom." Marcus looked between the formidable elderly woman, the fearless 9-year-old, and the towering protective presence of Wu Jin. Realizing he had completely lost, his face flushed with deep embarrassment. He backed out of the doorway, slammed the door, and disappeared into the rainy street. The bell chimed softly as the door swung shut. The bakery was silent again, wrapped in the warm, golden light of the display cases. Malia let out a dramatic sigh, setting her water bottle down. "Honestly, Mom, your exes have terrible timing. I was waiting for the ring part." Jung-suk burst into a ringing, delighted laugh, shaking her head. "The child is right. Wu Jin, get back to business." Wu Jin chuckled, a deep, beautiful sound that washed away every drop of lingering tension in the room. He turned back to Imani, taking both of her hands in his. "Imani," Wu Jin said softly, his voice trembling with an emotion so pure and deep it made time seem to stand still. "I promise you, for the rest of my life, I will spend every single day making up for the pain my father caused your family. I will build a future with you that honors your past, protects your peace, and cherishes your heart." He sank down onto one knee right there on the flour-dusted floor, holding up the sparkling ring. "Imani, my son, my home, will you marry me?" Tears of pure, overwhelming joy finally spilled over Imani's cheeks. She did not hesitate for a single second. "Yes," she whispered, stepping closer. "Yes, Wu Jin, absolutely yes." Wu Jin slipped the ring onto her finger, standing up and pulling her tightly into his arms. He lifted her slightly, spinning her around as their lips met in a sweet, tender kiss that sealed every promise, every shared glance, and every heartbeat that had brought them together. Grandmother Jung-suk clapped her hands together with royal delight, while Malia tapped a quick update onto her screen. "Operation New Dad, complete success." A year later, the Chicago sun streamed through the massive glass windows of the newly renovated Moon Imani Cultural and Culinary Center in downtown Chicago. The smell of fresh sweet potato loaves, traditional Korean pastries, and rich coffee filled the air. Imani stood in the center of the bustling hall, wearing a beautiful blush pink dress, her hair styled with delicate white orchid blossoms. She looked radiant, surrounded by laughter, family, and success. Wu Jin walked up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist and resting his chin gently on her shoulder. He looked happy, relaxed, and deeply at peace. His CEO suit traded for a soft-knit sweater as he took a moment away from the crowd. "Are you happy, my chairman?" Imani murmured, turning her head to press a soft kiss against his cheek. "I am the happiest man on this earth," Wu Jin whispered, looking out at their combined family. Across the room, Jung Suk was sitting at a VIP table, wearing a magnificent traditional silk hanbok, proudly teaching a group of international investors how to properly eat Imani's custom fusion cakes. Beside her, Malia, now 10 years old and wearing an official junior board member badge, was delivering a PowerPoint presentation on expanding their bakery franchise to London and Seoul. "She is going to take over my company before she turns 15, Wu Jin teased, a warm, proud smile touching his lips. "And you are going to let her," Imani laughed softly, turning in his arms to wrap her hands around his neck. "I absolutely am," Wu Jin agreed, his eyes locking onto hers with that same intense, sweet devotion that had started on a rainy night in a small corner bakery. He leaned in, pressing his lips to hers in a slow, passionate kiss that carried all the quiet equations of their hearts, proven right at last. Oh my goodness, what an absolute fairy tale ending. From a rainy night in Chicago to building an absolute empire of love and family. I am literally tearing up over here. Now I have to ask you all the ultimate question. What was your absolute favorite moment of this entire story? Was it Malia being an absolute tactical genius, grandmother Jung Suk shutting down the drama, or Wu Jin's breathtaking proposal? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. I read and reply to as many of you as I can. If you love this incredible journey, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss our next emotional romance adventure. Don't forget to comment down below where in the world you watched this final part from today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next story.